Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Warrant Officer Cherie Thiers. We warmly welcome the family of Private Bryan Higgins and Trooper Thomas John Higgins, whose stories will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in the singing of the national anthem.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains that let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind two of those on the Roll of Honour, which list the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Trooper Thomas John Higgins and Private Bryan Higgins. Thomas Higgins was born on the 25th of January 1882 in Bundaberg, Queensland, the firstborn son to Bryan and Mary Higgins. The following year, Thomas's brother Bryan was born. on the 5th of August 1883, the second son born to the couple. Their father, Bryan Higgins Sr., had been born in County Clare in Ireland. He emigrated to Australia and made his way to Brisbane, working on the railways, before taking up farming and eventually becoming a councillor in the Noosa Shire. He and his wife Mary went on to raise a large family at Coles Creek near Curran, a small farming town on the North Coast Railway line 125 kilometres north of Brisbane. The young Higgins children probably went to Curran State School, the oldest school in the district, and regularly attended the local Roman Catholic church. Thomas, who had been working as a farmer, enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force barely a month after the declaration of war. He was posted to B Squadron of the 5th Light Horse Regiment and in December left Sydney aboard the troop ship Persic. The Light Horse were initially considered unsuitable for operations on Gallipoli, but were later deployed without horses to reinforce the infantry. Thomas's unit landed on the peninsula in late May 1915 and was attached to the 1st Australian Division. After about a month on Gallipoli, on the 28th of June, Thomas Higgins was killed in action at Anzac Cove. He was buried the following day at Shell Green Cemetery. He was 33 years old. By then, Bryan Higgins Jr., who was a selector, had already followed in his brother's footsteps, enlisting in the AIF in February 1915. He was assigned to B Company of the 25th Battalion and left Brisbane for overseas service on the 29th of June, the day after his brother had been killed. After training in the desert camps outside of Cairo, by early September, Private Bryan Higgins and his battalion were manning trenches on Gallipoli. His early letters home were published in a local paper, providing a good account of his time on Gallipoli. We have been some months living like rabbits, burrowed deep into the earth. We have not had much fighting to do since landing. An occasional fierce artillery duel that gives us an idea of what lads who were here before us had to suffer. Seeing the condition of the men who have borne the brunt, I can never be sufficiently thankful that I had courage to leave a happy life and come out and give them a hand. My one regret is that I did not do it sooner. By November, the unsanitary living conditions had taken their toll, and Higgins was evacuated, suffering from jaundice. Transferred to a hospital ship before taking to a convalescent depot in Egypt, he rejoined his battalion in late January. By then, the Gallipoli campaign had been abandoned, and the AIF was in the process of expanding and reorganising in preparation for joining the fighting on the Western Front. In March 1916, the 25th Battalion had landed in France, the first AIF battalion to arrive. Fighting as part of the 2nd Division, the battalion took part in its first major battle in Pozières. The village had been captured on the 23rd of July by the 1st Division, which suffered heavily, enduring almost continuous artillery fire and repeated German counterattacks. After taking over the sector, the 2nd Division planned to mount an attack on the night of the 28th of July. The attack occurred later than planned and seemed plagued by disaster from the outset. Higgins's battalion and others were late to their starting line, and their movement was detected by German defenders. Remorselessly, German shelling raised dust that prevented artillery observers from directing field guns tasked with cutting barbed wire. When the attack began, the Australians were met by a hail of machine gun fire. The 2nd Division lost over 3,500 men. Bryan Higgins was reported missing during the attack. and it wasn't until a year later that a court of inquiry found he had been killed in action. He was 32 years old. Today, he is commemorated at the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux, alongside over 10,000 Australian soldiers with no known grave. In 1918, Bryan Higgins Sr. presented a font to the Roman Catholic Church at Curran as a memorial to the two sons who had been lost while serving with the AIF. Their names are listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. Their photographs are displayed today beside the pool of reflection. These are but two of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Trooper Thomas John Higgins and Private Bryan Higgins, who gave their lives for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.